What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and I am fortunate enough to have Chemo Treadway's beautiful Paxton 2200 powered Coyote 2013 GT sitting here behind me. Now, we just finished doing a small rear end build, and by small I mean huge. Everything that you could basically do to an 8.8 we just put in this. I'll put a link to that video above my head here so you guys can go back, watch that video later, because there's a pretty serious rear end that's in this car now. We also put a Hurst line lock on it, but there was a handful of things that were on this car before we got our hands on it, and I just want to show you guys a quick walk around on how beautiful this car is. We absolutely love it, and it might have even changed my opinion as a fair weather Mustang fan. Now, it's a fair weather Mustang fan. I like pushrod Mustangs. I haven't been crazy on mod motors, but the more Cobras we do, the more I absolutely love that car, and this might have been the turning point for me on the Coyote cars. Now, granted, it has a centrifugal blower, a Boss intake manifold, so it screams up top, and it just wants to be spun really hard. So that is obviously something that I like. Let's just take a look at how beautiful this car is. Hopefully the camera makes it look cleaner than it is, because it is dirty. I need to wash it. But he's got like a track style spoiler. I'm not sure where the spoiler is, but I really actually like the carbon fiber ends on it. Obviously the 13-14 back end is the sexiest of the S197 variety. He's got a badass plate. He's got Dyno 555 drag radials, 555R drag radials. Got 20-inch wheels that actually fit the car pretty well. I mean, it's large, but the wheels are large, the hood is large. It's got a 4-inch Cervini's cowl hood, and it's got a large spoiler, so everything's like big time. And Chemo, who owns the car, he's a big guy, so it all fits him. It does have long tube headers. It has a catted H-pipe. It has a Bassani catback exhaust. It sounds awesome. There's a shout out to Chemo, because I know he researches everything that he does to this car, but shout out to you on the exhaust selection, because one of the main reasons why I and some of my friends that I know are pushrod advocates for Mustangs don't like these Coyotes is everybody makes them so damn loud. Why do they need to be that loud? I'm trying to quiet my shit down, yet they take a bone stock Coyote, gut the exhaust out of it, and it just sounds like terrible. Sounds almost as bad as the LS guys. Anyway, so he did an excellent job on the selection. It's loud up top, but it makes a good amount of horsepower, so it's going to be loud up top. Now, it has a great package on it. It has leather interior, heated seats. The car drives fantastic. He has all UPR suspension on it. It has a solid spherical upper third member, so you do have a little bit more rear end noise in the car, but totally worth it, because this car hooks up and goes, and the centrifugal helps a lot with that too. So now that we have a basic kind of overview of Chemo's car, let's take it for a rip. We're gonna go test the two-step that he has on it, the line lock that we put on it. We're just gonna go rip it around a little bit. So we actually just finished tuning this car. ASSC and John Galway actually did the tuning on it, and it had a problem when it came in. We'll talk about that on the drive, but the final numbers on it, it ended up making 667 rear wheel horsepower and like 482 foot-pounds of torque, and that's on an SAE corrected dyno jet. I mean, it made killer power. So the thing moves, it drives like factory. I mean, you can put this thing at like 1100 RPM in 6th gear, and it just drives like it's supposed to. So it's a fantastic setup. Larry killed it with the tune once again, and we're happy to be working with those guys. But let's hop in this thing, let's go take it for a rip. Let's see what it sounds like. how could you go wrong with a centrifugal, two-step? Fucking makes all the right noises. All right, let's take this thing for a rip. I'm gonna whip it around the block, probably stop at the car wash. And then this car is a wrap here at Street Car Shenanigans, and we are so happy to have it here. Oh, geez. Needs a street car sticker. So we got one more thing left on the list of things to do. We gotta put a sticker on the back of it. But otherwise, let me show you why this thing's changed my opinion on Coyote cars. All right, so now we decided to take Chemo's Supercharged GT out for a little cruise. I'm gonna go visit my buddy's shop, JDR Diesel Repair, up in Bassett, Wisconsin. It's a good distance, and the roads will be a little bit more open since it's kind of a high traffic time, and we want to go kind of open this thing up. But we've already gone through the basic modifications on this car. Chemo bought it before it had any of this stuff, so everything that's been done to this car has been done by him, and I think he's actually done pretty much all the work aside from like the blower install. But it still handles great. It's super quiet in here. I have the windows rolled up right now. It is a really comfortable car to drive, considering that it has solid control arms, solid upper control arm, the spherical bearing, and then the lowers are poly, and they're relocated to be lower. It has all UPR springs, and the car really hooks up pretty well, considering it only has a Dyno 555R drag radial on it. You know, it doesn't have a crazy tire. Now, he actually found us through Brian Griffin, so if you guys haven't seen the Lightning build, that is Brian Griffin's truck, and they are actually really, really good friends. So he wanted to take precautionary measures to rebuild the rear end in this car before he started really racing it hard this year like he would like to. And that's what brought him to us. He had 35 spline axles with C-clip eliminators, and he wanted to put a spool in it. Now, I'm sure many of you guys have maybe possibly even driven a car with a spool in it. But if you haven't driven a car with a spool in it, it's not really the most street-friendly thing. I mean, sure, people say they drive them all the time like that. People say that they've had spools in their cars forever. But in a 2013 Mustang GT that makes 670 horsepower and 470 foot-pounds or 480 foot-pounds, I mean, do you really need that? So we kind of conversed with it back and forth, see what his overall goals of the car were, see if it's really being more of a, you know, 80% track car, 20% street car, then maybe I could start seeing that. But it's not. He drives it 20-30 miles to work each way. He really goes out and cruises it and car shows it more than he does race it. So after kind of going back and forth with him, we decided to ditch the spool idea and go with a strange S-trac 35 spline posi unit. Now it is a badass unit. We put it in multiple things. It's in that white turbo Cobra, it's in our red Cobra, it's gonna go in my notchback. It's just a great posi unit that gets the job done and accepts 35 spline axles. Then when we move further, it was like, well, do you want to do this rear end one time, or do you potentially want to do it twice? A lot of guys with the C-clip eliminators complain about one thing, and that is axle leakage. You have those seals on the end do not seal that well, and you're still not beefing up the end of the axle. Not that that's a failure point, but switching to a 9-inch end like this also really beefs up the end of the axle as well. You get rid of the thinnest part of that 8.8 housing, and you put a nice beefy big 9-inch bearing on it. Then you put a big bearing on the end of the axle, and everything is good. You don't need to worry about C-clips. So it is a win-win. That was the route we decided to take. If you haven't seen that video, obviously click above or in the link below, and you can go see us build that rear end. Matt from Wisconsin Race Cars crushed it on it, put a bottom brace on it. We put a girdle diff cover on it. Kept the same 373 gear. It really likes that gear. And with this MT82, the deep overdrive, I'm doing 55 at like 1500 RPM. I mean, you can cruise this thing around like a puppy dog, and it really gets after it when you're going. So I'm happy with the setup that he's got planned on this car. Chemo's actually a really smart guy. He's not somebody who just says, hey, make my car faster, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But he does have the exact picture of what he wants this car to be in mind every time he spends $1 on it. So this car 670 horsepower and 480 foot-pounds of torque on 9 pounds of boost. I mean, these Coyote motors are really breaking into my heart because they are super efficient. Now, why are they so efficient? I mean, the main thing is they spin a lot of RPM, so that helps. But the main thing is really that they have a ton of compression from the factory. I mean, this motor, I believe, is like 11-to-1 rolling off the assembly floor. Whereas when the mod motors first came out, they didn't have any kind of compression like that. They were nowhere near as efficient. In fact, the Red Cobra, we kind of took a page out of the Coyote book because we made that motor almost 11-to-1, and it makes similar horsepower on you know, 8-9 pounds of boost. It's pretty close. So having that extra compression to start with really helps, especially in these centrifugal applications. Gives you that low end torque without having to sacrifice it like you would, for example, on a Cobra 4 valve. You put a centrifugal on that, you're not going to have any low end torque after you do that project. A lot of those guys like to bump up their compression. It's a good idea. This car sounds so good. Best sounding Coyote I think that I've witnessed in person. I mean, this thing hooks up. Tires are a little warm, roads are warm today. It's a beautiful day. It's like 80 degrees outside. And this thing just gets down. Last night it was a little bit cooler, and I grabbed second gear pretty hard, and she broke the tires loose. But right there, it wasn't doing any of that. Now I will say the MT82 transmission is a bit tough to get used to. I've missed third gear in this car a couple times, and that's pretty uncommon. Not to toot my own horn, but it's hard to get used to the shifter location and really the trans in general. I wouldn't blame it on just the shifter location alone. Trying to make a little pull here. So much yes. That two-step is money. That thing is great. Good choice, Kivo. Oh, this car is fantastic. Really breaking my Coyote shell on this one. Now with the Coyote, the Boss intake manifold, and the centrifugal blower, I mean, if you drive this thing below 35, 4,000 RPM, aside from a little bit of blow-off noise, you can't really tell how much power it has because it doesn't make a ton of torque like a PD car, a positive displacement blower car. This thing, you really have to spin it, but once you do, you keep those R's up, this thing is moving. You keep the RPM up over 6,000 RPM, and she's going to be getting you from A to B real quick. Now this thing has stock fuel pumps. I can't believe it made 680 horsepower on stock fuel pumps, but they are out of breath. So the next project we're going to be doing is fuel pumps on this, probably a fuel system, and even consider going to E85, which will take a lot of fuel pump, but it's already got the injector for it. So that's probably the next biggest project on this. So I'm here at Jeff's Diesel Repair. I'm going to stop by, say hi to the guys. I'm going to get out of here, and I'll bring you guys an update on the drive home. I really have nothing bad to say about this car. I mean, it's arguably the best looking body style of the modern Mustang. I love it. I think the way Chemo's got it set up with the 20-inch wheels, the 4-inch cowl, the big spoiler, I mean, it looks awesome. And I think the bigger features actually make the car look smaller because it's much larger than, you know, the SN95 or the Fox body. And you can feel that in the characteristics of the car as far as how it handles. But I'll tell you what, this car rides super smooth. It handles fantastic. It stays planted really, really well. And I don't have a negative thing to say. I mean, the only thing that I keep referring back to with these heavier cars like the S197s and the S550s is that they do need more horsepower to put you on the ragged edge. You know, if you're inexperienced with higher horsepower stuff or street cars or whatever, then that might not be the case for you. And if you're used to driving this car in factory form, this is a ridiculous upgrade compared to what it is factory. I actually considered buying one, and I was unimpressed going from my SRT8 Jeep to go test drive a stock 14 GT. But this thing is wicked. Now, I asked Chemo, what would he change? Now that he has the Paxton, do you think he would have gone with a positive displacement blower instead, like what's a rave right now? And he said that if he was to do it over again, he'd probably go with a twin turbo setup, which is very common, obviously, with the Coyote platform. If you're watching this, you probably already know that. But that would be wicked too. I mean, it is kind of crazy that there's over a 200 number difference between the peak RPM number and the peak torque number. I mean, 680 horsepower sounds awesome, but 480 foot-pounds, you really feel that low torque with this smaller engine. You know, it doesn't have the displacement of an LS. It's got compression to try to help it out a little bit, but you know, these newer cars that are coming with 420 plus cubic inches and the 11-to-1 are really making torque like crazy. And then heads cam intake, you're allowed to spin them up pretty high too to keep up with these modulars. But I think once we put a fuel system in this and we start twisting it a little bit harder, get up to 7,500 RPM, maybe a little bit more boost on E85, bring that torque number up a little bit, this car is going to be a handful and it's going to be a rocket ship. So I just want to give a shout out to Chemo for allowing us to work on this car. I'm really happy to welcome it into the Street Car Shenanigans family. If you guys have any questions about the setup on this car, what we would change, what we would do different, or obviously what is our favorite part about it, then comment down below, ask us anything. So I want to give a shout out to Chemo Treadway at Tribal Hawaiian on Instagram. Follow him, follow this car, and see where it progresses. But thank you so much for trusting us to work on this car. I am happy to give it back to you in excellent condition and bulletproof rear ends and a much better tune than what was in it. So thank you guys once again. Thank you so much again for allowing us to work on it, and we look forward to what you allow us to take it to in the future. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's just drive it a little bit. Alright, so we're almost back to the shop, and I think the last thing we have to do is test the line lock for science. It's only right. Well, that's it on Chemo's 2013 Mustang GT. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more future content, and we'll see you guys next time.